What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to G-Ball Vision. Tonight we're taking a deep dive into the Koenig Arius. This bad boy is just so well done. It is very well done. I've had the pleasure of checking out a couple of really premium knives over the last couple of weeks, and I have to say this thing is exceptionally well done. I had my doubts about this knife before I ever checked it out. And I have to say, a lot of them doubts have been kind of erased for the most part. You're getting a nice drop point blade, M390 steel on this guy. You have a two-tone finish. It's like a satin and then tumble satin almost, or I'm not sure what they call this finish, but this two-tone look is very eye-catching for sure. And I've heard some people say they don't like the blade shape. I've heard some people say they love the blade shape, that the tip is too high, that there's too much belly. And I'm of the opinion that I don't think it's really that high. You're almost in line with the pivot here. I think it's low enough to do a lot of different cutting tasks pretty easily. Now, like a lot of above pivot drop points, you will have to raise the wrist up a little bit more, but I mean, is that really that big of a deal? Not to me, really. And then, you do have a nice amount of straight edge here that goes into this belly. It's not just one continuous belly like the Rosie. So, I could see that even being more of a gripe on the Rosie than this one, per se. But I think you have a nice, clean drop point blade here. You have this nice little swell, this little ramp that comes up, and then a very easy taper down to that tip. A little bit of swedge going on, and then it kind of flattens off more towards the tip there. You do have a nice cutout, and then a fuller that runs into the tang back there. Or not really a usable fuller, but a nice aesthetic. And then you have the rear flipper tab on this model. And I have to say, guys, this thing is tuned so well. I mean, I don't think it could seriously get any better for this knife. It is just so well tuned, guys. For the thumb, the reverse, for the flipper tab, it is just masterful. They nailed it on this particular Arius. They nailed it, and from what I typically hear, that is the occasion for most of them. The only thing on I might as well bring this up. It's not a big deal, and it's proven to actually be something I kind of like a lot. The cutout is a little bit extended from where you typically would deploy a cutout or a thumb stud. It's a little bit further away from the scale. And at first I was kind of like, that's different, not that it's bad or whatever, just more that it's different. And I have to say, I really enjoy where it's located. It just works so good. The flipper tab is executed perfectly. You have jimping up there. You can push button it, sort of, more like a downward push button, I guess. And then the light switch works extremely well. And then you have the typical bead blasted scales here. I'm not sure, how many different models and versions of this knife they offer. I know they have the mini, and I'm pretty sure they have some different variations of this, but don't quote me on that. And then you have a nice little back spacer here that has a integrated lanyard hole. It would probably look even cleaner without this lanyard hole. Not that it's really an eyesore aesthetically. It's really not. But it would, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. Because of this area here, maybe not. Either way, it looks good. The clip is fairly unique, and you have hidden screws here. Some people might complain that this is over the cutout for the lock bar. I don't know that to be too much of an issue. I've only pocketed this a few times as it is not my knife. But I haven't had any issues with it. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. I guess if you want this kind of build. I'm not sure why they haven't. I know this is a later generation, and maybe it's not an issue to them or what they've. But you would think maybe to angle this out and around, maybe that, you know, out around the relief cut, or have a, I don't know, do something a little different, because there's plenty of room here to kind of do something different, almost like a Jaeger clip or a Raptor clip, one that kind of comes down and angles out, you know. So that's one thing to consider. It could be a small issue in and out of pocket, but like I said, I've had no issues with this thing whatsoever. So after a lot of blabbing, I have to say I've been pretty impressed with my time with this, albeit a short amount of time. I've been pretty impressed. 3.5 inches total, 3.25 cutting edge, and then all the way down here to this very tip, you are at 8.5 inches. You're just at 8.5 there. As far as the weight on this guy, you are looking at a solid 4.8. So there is this is a fairly substantial. I mean, it's not heavy by any means, but it does have some weight to it, which is nice in my opinion. I like something that feels fairly substantial in the hand. So you're looking at about 120 there is what I'm going to guess and go with. And then as far as behind the edge, we'll just pick a random spot here. Try to get a good hold. And we're looking at, if you can read that, about 16 thousandths right there. So not real thin, but pretty damn thin. It ain't TRM atom thin, you know, 8, 9, 10 thousandths, but it's pretty thin. I think this is the way the geometry, at least, seems to me, is this is going to be more geared towards intermediate use, you know, kind of a slicer, not a pure slicer, and kind of able to be a little bit heavier used in a sense, but not too crazy. That's kind of the feel I get from this knife. I mean, it's a little bit larger in size. It's a little bit heavier in weight. It's a substantial knife. So I think this is kind of targeting that middle of the road between complete slicer and hard use work knife. I think this is kind of aimed in the middle of that. As far as comparisons go, we got the bug out there. We have the 20.5 there. And then we have our catalog of Hogues coming out here with the RSK and the Deca version 2. The RSK is going to be a fair comparison up against that Koenig. And then as far as the PM2 is concerned, that is also very close. So that's a very fair comparison. If you like the PM2 size, you're going to be basically hitting that size. And in my opinion, this is one of my favorite sizes right here. I mean, 8.5 is a great size. You get plenty of blade there, plenty of handle. You know, and I don't mind them a little smaller and a little bit bigger. But this is very well rounded in the way that this is built and thought out. I like an all-around user, so to speak, opposed to, don't get me wrong, I like hard use knives and I like knives that are just slicers. But there's something about that knife that tries to hit the all-around aspect of things. You know, this would be a decent EDC knife, a decent work knife, a a decent gentleman style knife. I mean, this nails a lot of different categories. And hell, I mean, you could poke something with this too. So, you know, this could be a very good all-around user. There's nothing that this wouldn't be at least fairly decent at. The only thing I could see it maybe, you know, having issue with, and that's going to be the same with anything that has a tip above the pivot, getting in behind strapping and that sort of thing, is not going to be the greatest thing in the world for a knife like this, like a Wharncliffe or a sheep's foot can get behind. You can still get behind, and, you know, there's ways of going about doing that. Let's go ahead and cut a piece of cardboard up here and see what kind of edge. This has a second layer here, so it'll kind of be rough, and then it should go right through. Or actually, that's a triple layer. So at the beginning there, we have 2 and then 3. So a nice thick piece of cardboard here. I'm in the cutting choil. So yeah, it's taking on 2 pretty well. This is going to be, like I said, it's not going to be a pure slicer, but you'll be able to do a lot with this knife right here if you wanted to. If you wanted to just keep it for a gentleman style carry, a light use style of knife, that would be, you know, perfectly fine as well. But this knife, I think, with the right lockup, you know, with the right geometry in the locking area, this would definitely be capable of a little bit heavier use. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to test this lockup. Now, I've had a couple different outcomes. Jamie has given me the okay to test all the knives. I'm not going to do anything crazy with them, but we are going to see how is that lock holding up. You're right about 25% or so. I've had a couple different outcomes with this, so let's see what we got. So a little bit lighter of a tap up top there. So now, with that being said and with that being done, it is all the way out at the edge of the tip, which means that is the, you know, most force that this blade could take, is being all the way out here. You're going to get the most on it. It doesn't fail, you know, up and through here. It's when it gets out here. Now, this also has not been used a ton. It has not been opened and closed a bunch either. This is a fairly newer knife to Jamie. So, you know, it's not broken in that well. It hasn't had a ton of time to, you know, kind of work over that tang. Now, with that being said, I get plenty of knives right out of the box that have solid lockup. So you do with that information what you will, what you want. That could be right there a complete game changer for some people, and they just won't buy it because of that. I'm not saying not to buy this knife. I think it's fantastic. That could be just with this one right here. And this could just need time to break in. Or it could be a geometry issue. That we don't know. Time will tell. I won't have the knife much longer anyway to find out. But Jamie wanted to know. And the Rosie passes. And this one has its issues out towards the tip. So, you know, could be a break-in issue. It could be a geometry issue. It could be a climate issue because it's cold here. So could that be an issue? I know that's been talked about some or brought up some, not by any content creators that I've heard, but, you know, the issues with the atmosphere that the knives are in can also play a huge role in maybe some locks having issues. You know, if it's extremely cold or extremely hot, you could have some issues there potentially. But in that same vein and breath, I have titanium frame locks that come right out of the box in the same temperatures, in the same climate, and they do fine. So, you know, it is what it is. It's just, I do that for information to let you guys know this is what it's doing, what's happening. You may agree, you might not. That is completely fine. But there are people who want to know. And I'm going to continue to put the information out there. And it will be what it is. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the Koenig Arius. I think it is fantastic. That one little slip up with the lock is the only issue that I see with this knife, and hopefully it's just a break-in period. So time will tell that. Let me know what you think, though, and let me know what you think of everything else. I'd love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button on the way out. I love it when you do that. If you're new to the channel, or you've been here before and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button down below the video. I'll throw up 3 new videos. Go check one of them out, and I'll catch you on the next one.